a wonderful artist, Rick Anderson. Rick is from Mississippi. He's going to be showing his artwork today. Hello, Rick. How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So
Thank
we're going to start with a slideshow, and then Rick's going to probably show you some of his artwork, and then he's going to do a demonstration. So looking forward to that. Ethel, would you like to show the show?
Yes, we'll do a share screen. There we go. Okay. Let me just move these. There. So Rick here at Live with John Cogley. Purpose of having the slideshow, two things. One is we want our audience to follow you on your socials, Instagram and Facebook. So to our dear friends here, yes, Rick is or has an Instagram account. To follow Rick at Rick Anderson Art. And of course, Rick is also on Facebook. It's the same handle, his name. And just add the 3-letter words art. The next couple of slides, Rick, are your sample artworks, and we'd love to hear a line or two for each of these. We begin with this.
Okay, this painting, this is a full sheet of 22 by 30. It's really, I don't want to say typical, but how I created this piece is pretty spontaneous. But I did use some Daniel Smith masking fluid even before I started, just in random areas so that I can be loose with it and lay in color and let the water blend all the way through the piece. And the areas that I would mask after it dried, I would remove, and that was all cleaned to be able to lay in washes or do whatever I wanted, even if I needed to cover it totally up. But this piece this past year got into the National Watercolor Society Members Show, which is most exciting. And it's really like an abstract design with movement and contrast and colors. And one of my favorite Daniel Smith colors is Quin Gold. How can you do without it? And Quin Gold Deep, that's sort of right there with it. So I just really like how when I lay in the colors, how they blend and how they work well together. And I can lift areas or I can add more dark areas if I need, but it's more of the looseness. And this is like a Mississippi structure, or it could be anywhere in the world. But I like to use the geometric because those sort of hard edges play against the loose and soft edges of the landscape here. Now, I did mask out the trees, and when I lift the masking, the edges are hard in a lot of cases, so I have to go back in and soften them and add color so that they're just not stark white. And that feeling of the tree with the lines going up creates a nice movement. And I decided not to fill in that little area of white in the sky because it plays pretty well as a triad with the top, the middle right, and the bottom left. So, the paintings that I do and will do today, although I plan them out a little bit, I just like what as I work, what the painting sort of directs me towards. Now, this piece was in Fabriano. It's the same kind of situation. It's loose. It has contrast. The structure, again, is nice with a semi-hard edge, but it's the layers and the different colors that I add, which and the looseness down in the bottom. It could be a rainy day or storms and all, but all of that is the movement to create a nice design. And the tree elements, if I didn't have the rectangle and the tree elements, it would just be a total abstract piece of work. But putting elements of nature in it lets the viewer tell their own story. The first piece that was in Fabriano, no structures there at all, painted on an angle. Now I did put some white, Daniel Smith white. I'm not, I don't object to that at all because that's just what I like to do. And of course, also with the white, what it does too, it's not gouache, it's not opaque with the watercolor, but when I lay in the white with it being wet, it sort of merges with the color below and it gives a nice softness. And the angles at the bottom gives the feeling of the movement in the water, which is pretty significant of a lot of the things I do. And the trees to the right, I'll use that little spray bottle and it just diffuses it up in the air. So I love watercolor. Oh, that's a real bold piece. It's if you notice where I would wet the area in the bottom and the angles, and the paint just goes to the edge of where the water is. And so and then the color combinations. And then, like I said, in the Mississippi Delta, where we have flat lands, and you can see where I do the horizontal lines, although they're a little at an angle, then it takes your eye back and back and back into the sky. That's the same story with the last piece, except using a lot of color. And again, the sky, a lot of times here in Mississippi, we have these huge thunderstorms and they may come in and be gone before you realize it. But creating planes from the foreground all the way to the trees in the background, all the way up to the sky, I just do things that lead your eye from the front all the way to the back.
May I ask, what pigment choices do you make for such beautiful stormy skies?
Oh, that's a good question. I use some of the siennas and then I really like the undersea green and the serpentine green, because that gives me the undersea green is a nice deep color. But sometimes I will mix like a neutral tint with it if I want it even darker, or sometimes I will add like a little bit of Prussian blue, which gives it a deepness as well. And then you can see too, you can see the Quin Gold all the way through it. And what I like about it, using the watercolor and the water, you never know what's going to happen when you lay in areas, and they just a lot of times will just make shapes for that you don't even think about. And then right in about the middle where you see the real darkness here in the middle, I went back, I would spray with the mister a little bit just to slightly dampen it so it doesn't have that hard edge, but I can just lay in with the brush that contrast and making sure I leave some of that white, which is a nice contrast, and it just works well with the overall design.
Your landscapes are
Okay.
phenomenal, let me tell you.
This painting is actually in the San Diego Watercolor Society show as we speak. Again, now I call this one Light in the Window. The shape contrasting with the deep, rich, dark sky. But even with that, it's just not a flat sky. It has a lot of different colors in it. I think I've got Quin Gold in there too, and I can see Quin Gold deep. And it's a little different from the others in that it is a night scene, but I still have that movement down at the bottom which takes your eye from the tree, from the structure and the sky, and breaking those planes with the light and dark, and then that movement at a diagonal. So, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but I'm glad I sent this to San Diego. And that was a demonstration piece I did in my Zoom class. And it's on Fabriano paper. I mostly use Fabriano paper, both 140 pound Fabriano Artistico. That's what I will be working with today. But it was a demonstration of teaching techniques, and it just seemed to work. And if you notice those hard edge lines that go through, I take the tape, lay it in, just leaving that little thin line, And I just take a real inexpensive brush that I don't want to mess up, you know. I don't use my good brushes for that. And I gently wipe it through, and it brings that it lifts the paint and where I want it to be at those angles. And the good thing about the Fabriano paper, it will handle paint and work and layers and all that very, very, very well. So a demo.
That's the last image in the slide.
Okay,
Those were awesome, Rick.
thanks.
You're so welcome. Okay, so anything you would like to show, or anytime you want to begin, please go ahead.
Okay, you want me to put the camera down?
Sure, sure.
Okay. Ah, there it is. All right, let me see if my Zoom works. I think it might. Now, pardon me for the little shaking of the camera. I've tried to get it to not shake, but it just happens. The Zoom works.
Yeah, it works.
Yes.
And what I was, before we started, a lot of times when I say it's spontaneous, well, it is when I start painting, but there are a lot of times that I do a sketch, and I use a variety of pencils. I use ebony pencil, and I use like from 6H to the B's, and then to an F pencil, which I like a lot. But the ebony pencil, it has a really dark lead, and I can get the movement, you know, see it, and then where the trees will just work, and I get the idea. So this is the idea that I'm planning to work on today, and that's the sketch. Oh, that's another little quick sketch, because sometimes we have paper that we trim, and it may be a thin paper that you go, what am I going to do with that? Well, you draw on it or you paint on it. See, so that's the sketch there. Oh, and there are times where I get a little bit more detail. Now, this structure is typical of Mississippi in the rural Delta areas, where I was talking earlier about the land being flat, and you can see where the plains that take your eye from the foreground all the way up to the sky, and concentrating on the light and the dark. And it doesn't matter really what colors, what paint I use, as long as I get those value changes. So that's what I think sometimes makes a good painting good, and it would be even stronger with more contrast. So, and this is drawn on Bristol board. It's a smooth sketching pad. You can buy it individual sheets or in a tablet, but I like to draw on this because it doesn't have a tooth to it. And at times, you know, I will use a little blending tool if I want it to go, and that just sort of smooths it out. Other times I'll use a Kleenex, and it will get a nice sky if I wanted to have a nice sky in it. So I think drawing is extremely important. You cannot do enough drawing before anything. And if you're good at drawing, you can even be better at painting. And here are some of my colors, the paint. But I tell you, John, problem I have is every time I look and buy paint, I find another color. And it's amazing how that other little color, like the cobalt blue teal, I'll use that today. And it's sort of an opaque color, John.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I really, what's good about that paint is after I've laid in a darker area, I can put a little bit of that on there, and it sort of does its thing. So I like that color. I like every color, especially the new ones that I find, and I have to have it. So let's see. All right, this I tried to think about what size I wanted to paint today, and this is 12 by 18. I did some paintings with the little smaller tablets, but I couldn't get in it what I wanted to get in it, you know, for it to work. And then I tried the half sheet 15 by 22, and I'm thinking, you know, in this hour of time, what I can do to get to where I want it to be, so that even if I don't finish it, I will be close to it. Now, before I start painting, I will start laying in these different colors. I won't wet the entire surface. And this is on the block, so I don't have to tape it down. But what's interesting about these pieces that I do, a lot of times they don't fall in place until right towards the end, where I start tightening up a little bit. And as I paint, I really paint in a very spontaneous way. But with all the experience, you know, having taught art for, you know, in public schools, it just works in a different way. I'm always thinking about explaining to students what I'm doing, and that helps me actually learn how to do more things with the paint. So I'm just going to start off. Now, you ask what kind of brushes I use. These are my main brushes here, and these are Skoda brushes. They just do it all. And I have some of Lauren's signature brushes here as well. But what I will do is, you see a little bit of my palette over here. This is a porcelain palette. It's a good size. I like it because I can clean up all the paint in the center and it doesn't stain, but that's just a personal preference. Now, I'm just going to wet it a little bit. And what I like about this brush too is although it's a wash brush, a mop brush, it's still very controllable, especially because it has such a great tip to it. Now, I did use masking here, as you can see, the off-white. And I've painted sometimes where I will not use anything. And then when I go to the edge, I might creep in further than I wanted. But once I've removed the masking fluid, it's going to be a real tight edges, and there are ways to soften that up. So I'll start with some of the Quin Gold here. I just love how it takes to the water and just blends out. Of course, it will dry lighter. And you can't have it here unless I have it over here as well. And then I will go in with some of the Quin Gold Deep. And at this point, I'll add a little cerulean blue. Let me make sure I got that wetted enough, but I want to make sure I don't hit too much of that Quin Gold edge to start with. It did blend in a little bit there. I just really like how laying in these colors will just move into the other colors.
Is there any masking fluid involved in this particular painting?
Yeah, masking right here, here and here, masking here, here and here. You can see where those little little tan areas are.
Right.
Flicking right here.
Okay. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Now, this is what I like. When I mentioned this lavender, well, I mentioned the cobalt teal blue, but I like the lavender too.
Rick, what do you use to apply the masking fluid?
Good question. Well, I just happen to have this, And it comes with, I think 5 little tubes. That's if I want a straight line. But I have this little container here. I don't want to turn it too sideways. That I pour, it's nice and thick, which I like, but I thin it down a little bit if I want to do a larger area, not too much, but just enough where I can take an old brush and brush it in. But when I use it like this, if I want some of the very hair-like lines, here's like the little tips that come with it. And you might think, why do I need those? And what I do is, it already has the hole in it, and it's a very tiny hole because you take the top off, you put that on top of it, and that creates that real tiny point. Now, I also will tape it, so I'm sure that it will stay on. And as soon as I finish it with it, I wash it off thoroughly, and I keep it this way so that the air bubbles go up to the top. So that's, these are little things that you learn. And you have to make sure that as soon as you finish using it, you put the cap back on so it's sealed, because air will make it dry. But did that answer your question? David?
How are you splattering the masking fluid?
Right here. Now, let's see. You can see a little bit right there, just a little bit, because when I start laying in the wash down here that moves this way, I want those little areas to be white.
I have no idea. I just know that it's, it's a true to life kind of thing. And, I'm sure yeah, I know, I'm sure there.
I think someone's mic's on.
Yeah, muted already.
Okay.
Rick,
Now,
we're
yes.
wondering, for thinning the masking fluid so that you can apply it in the broader strokes in the larger volume,
Right.
how do you thin the masking fluid?
Okay.
Not just with two, but for the broad strokes.
I
Thank you.
just put a little in the container, because it comes out nice and thick. And that's the way we want it when we want to put it through the little tube, squeeze it out. And I put a tad of hand soap, the little soap that, when you spray it, it has a little foam to it. Because soap thins the water when we wash dishes. So I think just a touch of soap, not much, just a touch of soap in it will thin it out, make it smooth out nicely. But that's just something, and it may not be working like that at all, but it seems to work for me.
Hand soap acts as a surfactant often to thin that, keep it separated.
Yes. Now, what I'm trying to do here, as that dries, I'm looking at it, trying to create like a design, a feel of the distance. And there are areas that I have masked that will remain white, but also I want to lay in some areas that at the end may have the feeling of water. It may or may not, but like I said earlier, I paint spontaneously, and the painting almost guides me to what I want to do next. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't work as well. But we'll lay this water in here, and I'm going to add just this little bit of cobalt blue teal.
Is your painting on a tilt?
Yes.
Or Okay.
I
Did
made
I
it.
miss that?
I made the tilt with foam board. So,
Okay. What degrees do you think it's tilted?
uh,
Roughly.
9 degrees. I used my iPhone to test it once. And if I
Thank
don't want it, you're welcome. And if that's too much of an angle, I put a little piece of foam board at the base. You see how this way it's level and this way it's at a little bit of an angle. And if I want more, I can remove that little riser.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I'm going to use a little bit more of the cobalt blue here.
Rick, I know you said this, what is your paper, hot press or cold press?
It's cold press.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Rick, how much time are you spending right now referring to your original sketch, or does that just come in later on?
Well, I did lay it in, I did the sketch basically. And it's right here, so I can refer to it. And it's just a reference sketch. And it can change and not be exactly like this at all when I finish, but mostly like right in here, you see where this has that movement downward. I will lay in some shade, and you'll see how I do this. And it's really, I flick the brush a lot, and I just like how doing that adds to the looseness of the painting. And like I said earlier, a lot of times the piece won't come together until right at the end. I'll go back with some Quin Gold light, or just Quin Gold right in here. Now I like what's happening there, but what I need to do, use the little mister here. And add to that. All of the time when I lay it in and it becomes lighter and as it dries, then I can go in and add a little misty of water to replenish that area, and then lay in some a deeper color. It's like, layering on top of what you've already put in, but making sure that I don't totally cover over the first layer, because that's creating the contrast. And if I put it over the first layer, I'm not going to have as much depth to it. All right, let's see what happens here. I'm going to lay in some water. Now I have about 4 jars of water because I like it to be clean. Okay. It's going to be a nice cobalt blue right here. Now, what I have to do too is put that over where I don't want it to splatter. And see how that runs nicely? Just has a nice feel about it. And I like where the water stops and the pigment stops right along that edge, but still it blends in here. And this is a landscape without any green, huh? Well, that will happen later. blend that over top of that Quinn Gold Deep and Quinn Gold with the blue being transparent. It's going to give that a nice feeling of the secondary color. And you notice I'm mostly using this mop brush. Now, I'm going to go with a little bit of transparent power orange because it goes nicely. And it's going to, of course, dry lighter.
And you don't seem to worry about your pencil marks showing?
Not at all.
Okay.
In some cases, it helps, you know. Now watch what happens in a second. And this is what I like too. I'm mixing Quinn Gold with Quinn Gold Deep here. Of course, that's that surface is dry back as I paint on it. Take the mister just a little bit, not a lot, but see how that starts to bleed up and down. So that's really making everything work together. And if I do it over here, let's see. You see, it gives the feeling, because in like where all the trees start to turn those beautiful colors in the fall, that just sort of, it could give a feeling of trees, fall trees in the background. Doesn't have to.
We have a quick question on Facebook from
Okay.
Judy, and she's asking, I'm curious, if you don't have to explain to viewers, how long would you spend on a painting about this size? Sometimes I
question.
like my quick loose sketch. And great
Okay.
demo from.
Well, you know, having taught for so many years, it might be a little shorter in time, but being able to describe what I'm doing really helps me when I keep working on it. So in some cases, it may not take as long. In some cases, a lot longer. Now, I have to say this too. I don't have to, but this is important as well. Generally, I may be working on 3 or 4 pieces at one time. And the reason is because if I need an area to dry and I don't want to just sit and not do anything, then I can move it, set it gently somewhere, over to the left or right, and then take the other piece and work on them simultaneously in that manner. So I've been trying to work on this piece, this size, so I can almost be finished by the time our session is over. All right, let me think. Now I've got to think here as well. How about, this undersea green is fabulous. And I'm probably going to mix a little bit of Prussian blue with it, which will give it a deeper value. Now, it doesn't matter that I'm going over some of this other area because the dark over the light is going to put this forward and that it back a little bit. Although it's masked right here, I'm still going gently with it. See how rich that color is? Now, when this does dry, I will go back in and put some of the tree branches because I want this canopy to look like it's covering, coming over the picture plane. And see the contrast we're already creating. Now, I want to be careful. I don't want to kill all this blue sky. So using the side of the brush, it'll have a nice blend to it. And then to push these structures forward, that's what putting the dark behind them does. It will pull this forward and that forward. Although this is in the distance, I will soften that and it won't be just totally white, but I won't leave this all totally white either.
Rick, I have a question for you.
Okay.
I'm watching you pick your colors. Do you work with one palette or do you choose a palette? We can't see your whole palette, so we don't know what that looks like.
Give me a
But
second.
yeah. Oh, great. At
So-
some point today, would you be able to go through the colors in your palette?
You mean tell you what they are?
Yes.
Okay. How about this? All right, cobalt blue teal. I wrote it down, okay? Sleeping Beauty turquoise, genuine. Jadeite green, genuine. Undersea green. And then this is Quinn burnt scarlet. And that's Power Scarlet. Let me get the other side. This is Power Red. Transparent Power Red. I love that color. Yellow ochre, cadmium yellow medium, permanent yellow deep. I just bought that color. It's fabulous. I like New Gamboge, but these sort of this is a little bit deeper that I feel than the New Gamboge. And of course I have white here. Well, this is heavy porcelain, and that's Quinn Gold Deep, and that's Quinn Gold. Now that's the lavender, Prussian blue, French ultramarine blue, the phthalo blue red shade, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, cerulean blue, and the how you say that, John? Carbazole violet.
That
Is this
lapis.
the porcelain palette?
Porcelain. Yeah.
Who makes it?
I have the top somewhere. I'll send it to you, Gabriel.
All right.
And do you
But it-
squeeze fresh colors from the tube every time, or do you sometimes work from the dried color on your
Sometimes I
palette?
work from the dry, but what Lauren had said one time is warm water will wake the color up. And so I have like a little thing, I suck the water in, and just put a few dots over each one before I start painting. And it will awaken the color up. But now for today's session, I made sure that I had all the paint I needed. And not that I would ever run out, but I have ample supplies. So now where was I? Let's see. Oh, and let me show you this too. These are colors I like as well. This is Lunar Violet, Moon Glow, Neutral Tint, and McLaurin Black. And these wells I can fill up as much as I want, and they're independent of the palette over here. And of course, all these like the Lunar Violet gives it adding that or using it by itself gives it that little soft, cool violet color. Let's see. Let me try out the Lunar Violet just for fun. You just lay it in. I generally mix it with other colors. Okay, now this won't also, this will not stay blue, okay? It will change. But I'm gonna work this a little bit more here. You see, it's creating a feeling of depth here. I want to get a lot of pigment on the brush right now. A lot of pigment. And a little Prussian blue as well, because I want it real deep. And see, as this starts to dry, still wet, put in the darker over top of it, gives it a nice contrast. It's easier, I don't know if you see it as well on the screen as I do here. I don't want to kill all that blue. I want to leave that, but just a little hair, just a tidbit over the top edge. Now let's see what happens here. I want to spray some here. Oh, not on my face. Now watch what happens when I put the Quinn Gold in the same areas. I want to make sure I leave white because I don't want to cover all that space.
Would you mind sharing some of your favorite mentors that have helped you along your watercolor walk?
Well, I started painting watercolor, in the 70s. Okay. That's before I knew anything. But actually, Laura McCracken tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Rick, think about this." And that's why we go to Fabriano and all. And that's why I met John and Catherine, but Lauren has actually been the stimulus for where I am right now with the current watercolor. I've learned a lot about the paint, the brushes, and the paper, because it makes a difference. When people ask me, like someone asked me the other day, "Hey, Rick, if I like to paint watercolor, but I don't know anything about it, can I learn?" And my first answer was, I can teach you techniques. I can't teach you creativity. But don't disadvantage yourself by using cheap materials. Use and I don't mean go out and buy everything, but just use better quality materials. Because if you work on cheap paper, you're not going to be able to do the things you want to do with it. If you use brushes that aren't quality, you're going to limit yourself. So did that answer your question?
No, I was looking for like people like Sargent and
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
watercolor masters.
Hey, how
that-
about Winslow Homer?
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong there. He's some of the most beautiful watercolors I've ever seen. Oh, and also Andrew Wyeth. I mean, really. Now I need to pull this in here. Now, you know, earlier I said it won't start developing until the end, shaping up. But you can see from what I've created so far, it's starting to build and starting to create layers and depth and contrast. Now, with all of the the warm colors with the Quinn Gold and all, I need to bring it down here as well. Going back in with Quinn Gold, a little bit more pigment. Yeah. You know, what's good about this is I'm looking here, but I'm also looking on the screen so I can sit in a different view. Just putting a little bit of this transparent parallel orange right in here with that green. It's the complementary color. It really does create a nice effect. Let's see if I hold it up a little bit more. I don't know if you can see that. All right, let me see. That's a little dry. That's good. This is a number 2 Escoda. It's a rigger brush. And when I start to lay in some of these trees, I will use that green mixture I had a while ago with the Quinn Gold Deep, because I don't want it to be like opaque, but I still want it to have a dark enough effect. Now, let's see what happens. Now, always push away from me, mostly when I'm doing trees. And by adding the trees, the viewer can sort of say, oh yeah, that's like a landscape, you know. Still a little wet here. Now, you notice the lightness, it looks a little darker, but it's still real transparent. So at this point, I will go back and add a little bit of blue, Prussian blue again to it, because that's going to make it even a little darker, I hope. I can go back and just put a touch in there, and it will follow the path of the water. It gives it more contrast, and see how these trees come forward and pushes the sky backwards. And that bright glow here really does, it's really almost like it could be a sunset. That's working. Looks like the clouds are just rolling in. I can't just have it here. I need to add a few branches here, and then I'll work this with more contrast as I go. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure you can see where I'm painting. I think I might need, well, design a tree here. it's going to push this forward. Okay, wow, that's starting to take shape now. But I probably won't get to the structure before we leave today, but I'll finish it. But it's really going to start making sense or coming alive when I start working this area, because this being water and that will be shadow under here, it's going to need some more white. It's going to need some reflections in there. I'm going to put more of that, a little bit of that cobalt blue teal in here, a little bit more, just to raise that up a little bit. You know, also like the lavender. Let's see if I can make something happen with it. It just has a glow to it. This is the transparent power orange here. I want it a little heavier with the water. Oh yeah. And need it right here as well. So that's starting to take place and have some movement, this being in the foreground here. And as you see, these horizontal lines takes your eye back and back and back. And then the trees come forward and the sky backwards, and the same thing here. So I'm starting to get more depth that I'm looking for. And although it's spontaneous, I'm making decisions at the same time as we all do. And what do I need or what do I not need? Is that too much or is that not enough? Also, when I flick a little water on it, you know, it will push the pigment aside. And most likely with that large space and these two white spaces, that's like a triad. So, and this angle coming downward takes your eye this way, but this takes your eye this way. So it's a force from here and a force from there. And then we have the horizontals as it takes your eye backwards. And then the trees, the branches takes your eye off the picture plane. Now what I'm going to do is take, I have this a Skoda number 1 inch flat brush, because there are times that I like to use the flat brush as opposed to the rounds. All right, so let's see. And create a nice line. And this dark right here against the power orange gives another feeling of growth in the landscape. I don't want to work too much there because I like what's happening here. Okay, now I'm going to use some Prussian blue, some French ultramarine blue, and that's mixing with the greens that I have over here on my palette as well. But then I'm going to go back. I'm going to use some neutral tint. Because a neutral tint will create even a darker feel, and it blends so well with all the colors. So right here under the structure, it's going to be dark. But I don't want to make it solid dark. But as you can see, right, by doing this, the contrast gives the feeling with the blues here that there is water possibly, and then there's shadows and reflections. And I'm gonna go ahead a little bit early with the white just to show you what it will do. When the white touches like that blue I just did, it tends to bleed into that color, which I think is fantastic. Thanks, John, for making these colors.
Thank you for using them.
You're welcome. But you see how that starts to bleed in with it, creating a feeling of depth. And then, the shadow could even be down a little bit farther.
Rick, excuse me, is that titanium white?
It is Chinese white.
Ah, Chinese. Thank you.
I have both though.
Okay.
Now see how when I took that line all the way across, again, you have a sketch, a loose sketch, and as I work here, the painting tells me what it needs as I go along. And that white had stopped here, but I needed that line to follow the movement here. Now it's broken a little bit here, but I don't need it straight across there because I don't want the same thing happening here as happening there. Now, as I said earlier, my experience is when I add the Chinese white or the titanium white onto on top of another color, that color is still going to bleed into it a little bit because it's all, it's because of the characteristic of the paint.
We have another question on Facebook asking,
Okay.
what is the consistency of paints that you're using that you splatter, and is it splattered on wet paper? But also for the consistency of the white. Thank you.
Okay, well, earlier when I was laying this in, I put the water, but not solid, on here, so that I knew where the water would have an edge to it and not bleed into it. Then when I added the color, it actually stops at that area. So I hope that answers the question.
So we're at the bottom of the hour.
Oh no.
Yeah, it goes quick, doesn't it? Your
does.
patience, and I heard just a lot of comments. He's just a wonderful teacher. It was
Thanks.
just follow you through all of that. Could you show us the original one more time, your sketch, and then?
Oh, sure. Here's the sketch.
My God, that's come a long way.
See? But see, it comes alive with the color.
Yeah, it does.
Right. But then, this could frame up and be, available as well.
Absolutely.
See? But what I like to do, I can, like you saw the other painting that was the portrait, I can be, like a photorealism or loose, but I like, there's a need for everything. And what I like about this is that I see all the wonderful paintings that everyone does. And it's like, wow, how'd they do that? And then I just do what I do, and it's fun.
Very awesome. Rick, you were saying that you do something on Tuesday. You do is it live? Is it open for everybody, or is it a class?
Well, it's called Go Terracotta. They're out of California. So I do an open studio every Tuesday from Central Time. It's 11:30, no, 10:30. I've forgotten. But it's an hour.
Okay.
And I don't know, people who are interested just go through, Go Terracotta, but it's an hour long. And I generally like today's class session. I have everyone with an open mic and ask questions along, because that's how I teach, and that's how they learn things. And there's no question that's a dumb question.
And Rick, where is that?
It's called goterracotta.org maybe or com, and they're based in California.
Is that on your social as well, Rick?
I will put it there. If it's not, I'll look.
Okay, so Rick's social is pasted in Facebook, and I believe Ethel pasted it on to Zoom as well. Excellent.
Let me see. I like to do this. Always have
She's nice.
a mat, because that way it pulls it down, pulls it together. But then when like I said, when I work these, it's just going to give it more life.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Ethel, can we see Rick so we can say goodbye?
Oh, yeah, Rick would have to switch camera.
Oh, let me go switch the camera. You know, it's hard to say goodbye, you know. Oh, maybe a song.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rick, thank you so much. Thank you for joining. Thank you for the great explanation and artwork. Much
Well,
appreciated.
Well, John and Catherine, thank you. You know, it's been an honor to do this.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Rick.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rick.
Rich. Great
Thank you
work.
so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
home run.
Thanks.